don't know whether you can see me.
And can you see us? More important.
Okay. Distinguished invitees, panel members, panelists, and also other delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed pleasure for me to be here and to deliver keynote speech on this important event, pre-unit forum. So, parallel to the exhibition that arranged, and also you have selected timely topic to discuss, because one of the key requirement of the country is infrastructure development for the growth. So in that context, even during the opening ceremony of the exhibition, some of the speakers who were addressing the gathering explained of the emphasized the requirement of infrastructure development. So I would like to go with the investment and infrastructure development rather than talking on only the infrastructure development, because the country or the government has envisaged to attract foreign direct investment to the country, considering the requirement of hard currency inflows to the country after the economic recession. Everybody knows that what kind of experience was there. After the recession, economic recession, we had a lot of challenges. We had to improve the government revenue. We had to implement social safety net programs to give relief for the vulnerable and poor and severely poor families or the households. And also, meantime, government has to control expenditures as per the Public Finance Management Act. We have to control, manage whatever the revenues that received by the treasury. So in that context, now there are two challenges. One is the requirement of infrastructure development. The other one is manage whatever the revenue that you are having. So those are not match each other. In that context, we know that during that period, we had a lot of difficulties in terms of infrastructure development. Even right now also there are certain limitations on infrastructure development. By using public investment or the public finance, as we need to manage government's expenditure level below than 13% of GDP. If we are going to improve GDP, we can, or we will be having more flexibility in terms of amount of the expenditure or the level of the expenditure. But Now, we need to improve or enhance the level of foreign direct investments and also the local investment. Government also not in a position to make public investment to develop infrastructure. Now, the stakeholders who are involved in the infrastructure development, they had a lot of challenges, difficulties because of the less development of the infrastructure. Now we plan to attract foreign direct investments. Government is having a lot of limitations in terms of foreign direct investments and also infrastructure development. Private sector also having same kind of difficulties because when it comes to the infrastructure development, government is the key stakeholder who puts money or the finance or funds for the development. When it comes to the attraction of foreign direct investment, it is obvious that they evaluate, they do their due diligence whether Sri Lanka is having enough infrastructure and also timely. Even as a BOI, we also having same challenge. Because if you go through the figures of the industrial zones or export-oriented zones, which are being maintained by and regulated by the BOI, except very few zones, we have utilized whatever the available lands up to the optimum level, or the maximum level. And also, even some of the investors, for their expansion, the requirement is some of the infrastructure in terms of utilities, water, electricity, and network, road network. So we are having some challenges on facilitating some of the investors who are seeking opportunity to expand their investments. Lack of infrastructure for provision of water, electricity, there are a lot of challenges. So, we need foreign direct investments. Meantime, we need to develop infrastructure. It is a kind of a dilemma. Now, any issue, we need to find solution. We need to find answers, and we need to address the issues. So we need to think out of the box. Even we have planned to develop zones, industrial zones for the export-oriented BOI zones in various districts. We are facing a lot of challenges because once the investor comes to the BOI, definitely they will ask whether adequate electricity connection is there, supply is there, or water facility is there, road network is up to the satisfactory level or not. So because we experience this kind of issues in terms of facilitating foreign direct investments. So in that context, this kind of discussions, this kind of panel discussions to get various views, opinions from the stakeholders are most important. So one of the answers, because I explained challenges, issues pertain to attract not only foreign direct investors, even for the local investors. So one of the mechanism or method that we are going to use is public-private partnerships. When it comes to the public-private partnerships, again, there is no proper legal framework to implement public-private partnerships in Sri Lanka. Government has recognized this requirement. Now we are in the process of, the latter part of the introduction of necessary legal provisions for the implementation of infrastructure projects through public-private partnership mechanism. So the private sector representatives, CEOs, chairmen who are sitting in the audience. So this new legal framework will be introduced very soon. Our target is to introduce it within third quarter of this year. So there are ways and means to address this kind of challenges. I hope that during the panel discussions, during the exhibition, we will be able to share our thoughts, our ideas, how we can overcome this kind of challenges pertain infrastructure development, which will create a conducive environment for the attract investments to Sri Lanka. That will create a platform for meeting external stability of this country and also economic growth as we planned, as the government planned to achieve at least in this year 4% of economic growth and also other targets in coming years. So hope that everybody will be contributing for this endeavor of the government to make or achieve envisaged economic growth of this country. So thank you very much for your patient listening. I hope that you will be having productive discussions, panel discussions during the session, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jayavarthana, for your valuable words. Please join me in giving our chief guest another round of applause. A louder one, please. With that, we can now begin the first session, which relates to infrastructure investment dynamics. Who, what, where, and how. We cordially invite Dr. Anil Priyanka, Senior Consultant RI Unit, on stage as he will be moderating the first panel discussion. Our panelists are Ms. Priyanka Samaravira, Executive Director, Investment Promotion and Research, Board of Investment Sri Lanka, Mr. Ishrat Rao, Managing Director, ADL Capital, and Mr. Revan Vikramasuriya, Director General, Colombo Port City Economic Commission. May we please have a round of applause as we welcome our panelists.
Thank you, Chief Guest Dr. Jayavarthana, for setting the stage for this interesting panel discussion. We are privileged to have a panel of highly distinguished members, ladies dynamics, including specific location investment, the profiles of the investors, which type of investment and how investors and investments are sourced. I'm Anil Bhadrathana, as I was introduced already, and I'm joined by, again, from the an executive director also in charge of research and investments, Ms. Priyanka Samaravira, and Mr. Revan Vikramasuriya, who is an expert on financial markets, and also an executive director, and he's actually the managing director of Adel Capital, is Mr. Ishrat Rai. So my first question is actually to keep this team going, is to Ms. Priyanka Samaravira. And as you're on the front line of dealing with foreign investors, can you share on the types of investment opportunities that the investors are looking for?
Thank you for the question. Actually, if I start with what is the infrastructure investment portfolio within the BOI, at the moment we have over 2,000 commercial projects, I mean in operation projects, and out of which around 244, that is around 12% only is infrastructure. But when you consider the FDI inflow to the country, that 12% amount to 54% of the FDI. So you can imagine the importance of the infrastructure projects in terms of FDI attraction as well. So if we go by our data, the most prominent subsector is shop and office complexes with around $3 billion investment, and also housing. So with the change of the economic landscape of the country, we are focusing more towards sectors such as port development, logistics sector, as well as in terms of the renewable energy, that battery storage. So likewise, actually, BOI has undertaken some sort of analysis and find out certain structural projects in the infrastructure sector. For example, this West Container Terminal 2, and there are a couple of logistic sector projects within the port of Colombo, as well as in Brumandal area, as well as in Gampaha. So we have identified certain structural projects there, which we can go for PPP basis. And apart from that, BOI has identified, and we are planning to develop 4 technoparks. One in Kurunegala, Galle, Digana and Nuwara. So for which we encourage the investment in terms of PPP basis. And actually at the moment we have even developed the concessionary agreements with the support of the ADB. So these projects will be coming very soon.
Thank you. That's a very comprehensive. Actually, I was going to ask you about the PPP, which your chairman also touched upon. So, in fact, yes, IFC and ADB have been pioneers in this region for promoting PPP, public-private partnership projects, and I think getting their advice, I think, is the best way forward. So that's very good. So now I would like to turn to Revan. Let's start with the potentially most significant investment magnet for the country at the moment, which is the port city. How much investment in infrastructure has already been made in that, and what is needed more to attract real investment?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. The port city was or commenced after the vision going back to 2015. It was established as a BOI company, gazetted as a strategic development project, established to reclaim a certain area of land in the Colombo harbour. or next to the Colombo Harbour, the south terminal. To date, that project has resulted in approximately $1.4 billion of investment, which is FDI. As Priyanka was mentioning, this also to a certain extent is a public-private partnership with the government and the project company Czech Port City Colombo Private Limited. The infrastructure or the reclamation part and what we call as the horizontal infrastructure is almost coming to an end. With $1.4 billion in investment, the project company is sharing in approximately 40% or 45% of the land area that was reclaimed on a leasehold basis. So the land continues to be owned by the government of Sri Lanka 100%. And because of the $1.4 billion investment by Czech Port City Colombo Private Limited, they were given a leasehold right on approximately 45% of that land. The next phase of this project is to complete or commence and complete what we call the vertical infrastructure, the putting up of the buildings, an expansion of the central business district. Out of the 74 land parcels where development activities can be carried out, to date we have leased 10 land parcels. Out of the 10, approximately 6 land parcels construction work is commenced. The project cost of those 6 is approximately $500 billion. Over the next 6 months, we expect to see construction work commence on the other 4 land parcels that have been leased. Again, you're looking at possibly $500 to even $1 billion for the development work, land and development costs on those land parcels. We expect to see significant investment coming in on the back of the stable policies that we are seeing being implemented by the government. And this can clearly be a catalyst to transform the landscape of Colombo and then the economic environment in the country. What needs to be highlighted here is the port city is one of, a government institution that's managing 269 hectares of land. But you have the Board of Investment, you had the Director General speak as well as the chief guest, which is the apex body in the country to drive investment. So we are pretty confident that the outlook for attracting investment into the port city on the back of what has just transpired over the last 6 months is significant and the opportunity is bountiful going forward.
In present day monetary value, how much more investment is needed, do you think, in terms of billions of dollars to make it a complete success, and how long do you think it will take? Any guesstimates? Yeah, I know it's a $1 million question or $1 billion question.
So when you look at the total land area across the 74 marketable plots, right? The development control regulation is gazetted, so everybody knows, or it is clearly articulated how much building space can be put on each plot. The total building space across the 74 marketable plots is 6.3 million square meters. Of the 6.3 million square meters, 50% is residential. And we've seen three companies actually driving residential developments. Absolutely successful achievement from the government. 25% is retail and about 25% is commercial. So when you look at the development cost of those 6.3 million square meters of built up floor area, factor in land price or the lease cost of the land for 99 years, you're looking at anywhere between $12 to $15 billion to develop and build this space out. Now, the second part of your question, how long can this be done, right? You talk to this is INFRACON, construction companies. It's very difficult to even say how long it will take to put up a 10,000 square foot house, right? They come in with a timeline and all these timelines get extended. So what we try to see here is we put milestones. In year 1, what can we lease? As I mentioned earlier, we've leased 10 parcels of land, 6 have already commenced. We'd like to see how we can commence construction work or approve plans to commence construction on at least 4, possibly going into the end of this year or early next year. If we can lease out another 5 plots of land, I think this is amazing progress, because you need to be able to maximize the revenue potential for the government, because this is government land at the end of the day. So you need to phase it out. You shouldn't rush into building, and any master plan development, you don't build it out in one shot. You build it out in phases, because how do you develop it? You build a certain phase, see the success of it, you go into the next phase, asking for a premium, and this is a planned process. Depending on how investor uptake happens, we go out accordingly and identify investors, and that would primarily drive the timeline.
Thank you, Ron. Yeah, that's an excellent answer, but I think it has evolved a lot because it's now investor friendly. Because there was a time that people were debating whether you need a visa to get into the port city, and also you had these QR codes and everything. You know, you had to scan to get in and out. You know, there was so much of secrecy. But I think since for the last couple of years, the direction has changed and it's in the right direction. And from my experience in the Maldives, I can tell you the moment you start housing construction, residential property, it's a kind of a multiplier. It will basically attract a lot of interest and investment here. So the next question is to Mr. Ishrat Rahim. Actually, you are a strong advocate of capital market development as the best way forward market like Sri Lanka, because what we lack are the funds, right? So can you just say what role does infrastructure play in attracting capital for investment from foreign countries?
Especially in the context of a market such as ours, given where we are in our life cycle or what you want to call it. I think we've interacted before in the Maldives as well. We also have been engaging with investors from the Middle East and all, but that's more debt related rather than equity related. But what we've seen, and I think we've also seen, there is this disconnect between investors there who are actually genuinely very keen on bringing money here, albeit on like a short-term basis. And the manner we responded, I think infrastructure is something I think we missed, or we're missing the bus there to some extent, because a lot of our borrowing, that's, maybe I'm digressing here a bit, but a lot of the borrowing that we've done thus far is just sovereign bonds being issued without an underlying whatever, like, just, you borrow because you need to repay a previous loan. And a lot of the borrowing also is about 3 to 5 years, sometimes a little bit longer, but that's a sweet point. 5 years is probably a sweet point in terms of borrowing. If you actually develop an infrastructure, proper infrastructure fund, which is also asset-backed, I think you know that my background is in Islamic finance, where the funding has to have an asset or an asset base. I believe there will be much more to that. And also the other attractive thing is you can bring in funds of a longer tenor, maybe the 8 years, the 10 years, the 13 years, because you're matching a project. You're speaking about how many years something will take for fruition. You're matching the tenor with the funding, whereas here you're just taking a loan just because, like I said, you're taking to prepay a previous loan, rather than actually contributing to the proper development of the country or the economy or whatever. So in that sense, I think infrastructure funding is something I believe has been ignored. Capital markets have been ignored, and I think I can see it. I think we're having the capital markets conference. We've been part of it for the last 14 years. I think Roshan also has spoken, I think, a couple of times. I think on the 22nd of this month. And one of the things which we are encouraged by the fact that now capital markets are seen not just as a bridge between, say, insurance and banking and all, but as a genuine catalyst to economic development, because I think it's been ignored thus far. Most sectors, we just need the stock market, which is sometimes playground of the rich type of, now it's more fundamental things that are happening. And I think capital markets have a huge role to play, but the issue is that whether the authorities actually become cognizant of the fact and do something about in order to actually use, like I said, infrastructure fund is a good starter, because the appetite, despite all the issues the country has faced, not right now, because currently it's a global thing, but the issues that were sort of unique to us, which we experienced over the last couple of years for for different reasons. Despite all that, when we went back, say, to some of the institutions in the Middle East and said, would you look at Sri Lanka? I mean, the immediate response is why not? Despite our rating having dropped to what it has, thankfully it's now reversing. Because I think we've always heard this thing, Sri Lanka is the darling of investors, and I believe that's to be true. A lot of people like to invest in Sri Lanka, not just because of the investment climate, it's also because Sri Lanka is Sri Lanka. So people like what they see here, the country is nice, we have a good product, like you talk about the Maldives, it has its own luster, and Sri Lanka has its own idiosyncrasy, which many investors also find attractive. So I think we're in a good place, but it's a question of trying to sort of convert that into proper funding and something that with a coherent plan that we can actually sell to investors.
Thank you very much. Other capital has done so much for raising funds on Maldives. I remember the first ever investment forum in the Maldives more than 10 years ago. I was part of that, and I think the Maldives government has taken on Sukuk, which is like a listed debt instruments, right? Which you can because based on the assets. The greatest asset we have is 80% of the land is owned by the government, right? So that asset with the infrastructure improvements adds value, where the infusion of capital can happen based on the asset backing, right? Asset backing. So I think there are instruments that, as you said, it's not utilized properly. We issue something bonds and all that, but they are not actually rated. With the rating, if we can issue, bonds which are listed on stock exchange, those capital market developers can attract a lot of funds, and we can use the land parcels that are improved with infrastructure to do that.
So if I can just add to that, since you mentioned it, Sukuk, the first Sukuk was issued last. If you're part of it for Srilanka, which was again renewable energy. I think they are being withdrawn in this conference as well, and the gazettes and the rules have been amended. But what we need is a sovereign Sukuk. Like I said, all this is done by country.
Exactly, we should do that. So I think it brings to again back to the BOI. Priyanka, could you tell me that over the next 5 years, how do you see the landscape developing, and what are the incentives in place for the purpose of attracting more investment FDIs that we need for the development of this country?
Actually, in terms of the 5-year plan, we have established a 5-year plan from 26 to 2030. Where at the end of 2030, we expect to have committed FDI, that is projects approved, around 4 billion, as well as the realized FDI that is actually coming to country, again another 4 billion. So if we consider the infrastructure piece within this scenario, for the 26, our overall target committed FDI is 2 billion and realized is 1.5 billion, and out of that we are planning to have around 30 to 40% from the infrastructure projects. So when consider the investment incentives, what I wanted to highlight is in 2008 we had this Strategic Development Project Act. It was a very attractive piece of legislation to attract FDI into the infrastructure sector. Under this piece of legislation, we have approved that are in place around 15 projects, and out of which 2 projects are in the manufacturing sector and the balance is in the infrastructure or tourism projects. So when consider the FDI inflow, even today, when take the annual FDI figure, around over 30% is from these SDP projects. So we had to keep it on hold in around 2023 on IMF instructions, because we need to establish some sort of very transparent mechanism to approve these projects. And I am happy to say that now we have done the amendment to the SDP Act and the regulations are in place, which is effective from 1st of April this year. So with that, we think that there is a tax holiday. There's a tax holiday ranging from 6 to 10 years, depending on the investment. Investment will be ranging from $50 million to $300 million, and there is an employment cap as well. So if the investment meet that particular criteria, then there will be 6 to 10 years tax holiday. So that will again attract more investment, I hope. And apart from that, we also have this enhanced capital under the Indian revenue, which again give 100 to 200% enhanced capital allowance for the investment above $3 million. So these two piece of provisions, we hope that will be enable more infrastructure projects to be coming to the country.
One of the main criticisms of the local investors was actually because there's no level playing field. You're giving tax holidays to people who are bringing in funds, but the people who are investing funds locally do not get those same benefits. But I understand the reasons for giving tax holidays for dollar inflows.
I want to make it correct that we don't discriminate between the foreign or local.
So whoever,
investors.
it doesn't have to be dollars, it can be local currency.
No, it is US, I mean even for the SPP, even though we mentioned $50 million above, then that can be equivalent. I mean,
Okay,
not
that's-
really need
Yes,
to
earlier
Yes.
this was skewed towards foreign investment only.
No.
So if a local investment and also
Yeah,
PPP
equivalent to
companies,
the
they
rupee
get the tax
currency,
holiday.
yes.
Right, okay, that's great. So that's a good incentive. And I think I'm turning to Revan again. With your international expertise and market knowledge, what are the policy changes that Sri Lankan government can implement or put forward to attract more foreign investment and even local investment into the infrastructure?
So I think in terms of policy, I think what investors, entrepreneurs, whether they are local or foreign, what they need to be able to do, and especially into infrastructure projects, which are long-term projects, right? It takes long to implement, and then the recovery on that is also over a long period of time. They need to have line of sight on the policy, right? What is the policy going to be applicable to that project over the duration of the project? So it could be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. So that is, I think, the most important factor. And then you need to create an environment that encourages risk-taking, right? So entrepreneurs need to be able to understand and be aware of the fact that they can go into these processes of identifying these infrastructure projects and have clearly laid out timelines on hitting the various toll gates that are required for during doing the due diligence, executing agreements, sorting out the financial aspects, project implementation, project completion and execution. So clearly articulated, or the investors need to have clarity on the fact that they can start these projects in a timely manner and then execute them and start operationalizing them in a timely manner. I think this is the most important aspect if we are to drive capital into these types of infrastructure developments.
Excellent answer, but what has happened in the past is that when a government starts something, like we had the monorail system and even the port fee, we had to pay compensation. One credit to this government is that it has not stopped any of the projects that were started by previous governments. And now the problem is, like, even Japanese investors think twice, because what had happened was it was a stop-go kind of policy, right? So when it's public policy, it has to be binding, because on behalf of the people you're making these commitments. So I think that aspect has been understood by this government, and that's a huge benefit for foreign investment if we can convince that we are an investor-friendly country, and there's no way we are going to turn it around and to say that when the governments change, we stop the policies of the previous government.
I think if I can add to that, and that's absolutely correct, and I've got Priyanka here for the BOI, correct me if I'm wrong, right? The BOI has been in existence, or the GCEC and then the BOI operationalizing 15, 17 SEZs across the country for 45 years or a little more. You've got multinationals operating in these countries for as long as that, right? From America to Australia to Europe to India to whatever. And I don't believe any of those foreign investments that have come in have actually faced any issues. They haven't been nationalized, they haven't been taken over, and they've successfully implemented and continue to implement these factories and these businesses. So this theory or understanding that policies are changing and businesses, when they come in and establish themselves, they come in under one framework and change, I don't think is actually factually correct, right? The next point is, if you look at specifically on the port city, yes, there were challenges, and other than governments changing, there were natural disasters, there were terrorist issues, right? These led to significant delays, right? You can't expect infrastructure projects, money to continue during COVID, etc., etc. What we've seen here is, and having seen the commission, the Ports Economic Commission being established in 2021, May, after Parliament certifying the primary piece of legislation, we've gone through 3 presidencies. We are at the 3rd at the moment. What is a fact is even businesses or investors who leased land in December 2021 did not do any or did not commence construction activity until January or Q1 2025. That is a clear testament to the fact that investors are believing and understanding the confidence that has been established since the government being established at the end of 2024. After that investor breaking ground on 4 land parcels in Q1 of 2025, there were active discussions, and we've seen 4 land parcels being leased out in Q1 of this year. Out of those 4 land parcels, 3 investors have already broken ground. A clear testament to the fact that the investors in Sri Lanka globally are extremely positive on around the fact that the policy that is being administered or implemented is investor friendly, and the market or Sri Lanka is open to drive or attract foreign investors and have created an environment to enable investment take place.
Excellent. Yeah, that is the key. Confidence, investor confidence, and being investor friendly. So I would like to throw to the audience. I'm sure you are having burning questions that are related to this foreign investment and infrastructure. Is there a mic going around, or can you raise your hand if you have a question to ask, and the mic will come to you, hopefully. Yes. Yes, Prashant.
Without a mic.
Yes. Can hear. Yeah.
My question was to Bianca regarding incentives. So, would it be accurate to say that the IMF program hasn't interfered with the incentives that were there previously, or has there been a change in the set of incentives post-time?
Actually, in terms of the Strategic Development Project Act, earlier we were granting investment incentives for any project which would change the landscape of the country. That was how the Act says it. So, for the projects that we identified as there is an economic significance, we could have given investment incentives in terms of the tax holidays for up to maybe 25 years. It could be tax holiday plus concessionary. But with the recent amendment, with the IMF suggestion, we have some sort of very transparent mechanism, which is investment based and employment based, and depending on the sector again. So there the tax holiday is limited up to 10 years. So there's a reduction in the tax holidays compared to previous one, and also some sort of transparent mechanism.
Yes, sir. Can you get a mic?
That's okay. What is the strategies you have used now to attract high-end technology-based investments to Sri Lanka? Because Sri Lanka has a middle income, upper middle income country, and with high education levels, will not be a suitable place for investment which are coming to Vietnam or even tourism-based industries in Maldives, because for the development purpose, government body also can direct the source of investment as high-end and appropriate for that. Because now even manufacturing garments or any thing related, raw material related thing, immediate things will be not profitable to Sri Lanka, and those ventures are moving on to Bangladesh and other countries. So to keep the investment in Sri Lanka and develop that for the whole economic development, there's a different type of industries and services are needed in Sri Lanka. How to do it?
Yes, it can be answered in several ways. I mean, in terms of what we can offer, as I mentioned, that we have developed this investment incentives in terms of SDP, under SDP Act, and also the enhanced capital allowance. So that will be a one way of attracting investment. And also we are planning to establish this 4 technoparks, again with the PPP model, and with the assistance of ADB that we have developed this concessionary agreement. So that will be coming very soon. So that will be another thing. And also we are planning to, discussions are underway that we are planning to have some sort of, for example, Japanese zones, identified locations. They are doing some sort of feasibility studies to see what areas or what locations would be more attractive for Japanese related investments. So likewise, there are a couple of strategies that we have identified to improve the techno projects into the country.
That's very interesting, because I think we've got to harness the potential of the youth who are, I mean, when they get techno-savvy and when they get qualified, most of them migrate. And there's a huge drain of our, youthful resource that we have. The human resource is the biggest capital we have, the greatest asset. So yes, that's a very interesting question. Thank you for that, sir. Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you for a very interesting overview. My question specifically is for the lady from POI. You already have 2 sites in Digana and in Kurunegala. So are you planning a different location altogether? Second question to everyone, simply for a matter of curiosity, because this is not something I've been reading about. We are talking about that due to the paucity of labor, that people who are having projects have to import, labor from Nepal, Malaysia, etc. But on the other hand, we also see that there is a lot of people, labor, leaving Sri Lanka, going to the Middle East, going to Romania, etc. So how is it that we are either not able to engage the local labor, or is it that the local labor is appropriate for the needs?
Yes, in terms of technoparks, actually we have identified 4 technoparks. What will be coming very soon will be Kurunegala and Golwan, because they are in the pipeline, they are some sort of ahead. And then the Digana and Noredia will be there. And apart from actually at the moment we are having around 17 EPZs. Some of them are very fully utilized, and we have 2 recently developed one in the Raur for the dedicated for textile manufacturing, and in the Araboka for pharmaceutical manufacturing. And apart from that, with the government blessings, we are planning to establish 5 more export processing zones within the country, and we are planning to have them for more regional development basis. And we are planning to have 3 zones in the northern province. One in KKS, that was earlier cement factory area, and then one in the Parantan and Mankulam. So there will be 3 in the northern province, and 1 in the eastern province, that is the Kapalture in Trincomalee, and that will be for the heavy industries. And another one in the northwestern province in Iranavilla, which is the former Voice of America's land. So likewise, we are planning to have 5 zones plus these 4 technoparks to be added into the BOI exports processing zone basket.
It's excellent news, actually. I hope that that works out, and we wish all the best to the BOI to make that happen. Yeah. Yes.
For Mr. Ishrat Rao regarding capital investment. Now I feel that it's time that we improve the green economy, for which I think we should give a mega promotion for investment in green and blue bonds. I'd like to have your comments.
Yeah, I can't agree more with what you just said, and well, coincidentally, otherwise we do product development on that side. So, like I said, we did one with the first listed equivalent of a debenture, which is referred to as Sukuk, was done last June or July for Srilanka, which actually could have been a green Sukuk or a green bond. Right now, I think in the next 3 months, you'll see the first green Sukuk coming out. So which means we are working in that direction, because you're right. I mean, in Sri Lanka, given where we are, given that renewable energy is such a big sector, and also the fact that we are an island, we are also hoping against hope that DFCC I think issued a blue bond, so similarly we want to do a blue Sukuk. It's just the equivalent debenture Sukuk, it's just that it's a slightly different structure, which is non-interest based. And why not the sovereign issue one? Well, because I think if we can go in that direction, we can also get funding at very concessional pricing. At one stage, I think we really missed the bus there, where Sri Lanka could have borrowed at 200 bips below conventional. And we were borrowing at 8%, 8.5%. There are funds that are available in the Middle East at 6%. So if you talk about $1 billion, I mean, that's over a 5-year, 8-year period. That's like another bond in itself, the saving. Today, those spreads have thinned out because it's not as deep as what it was. But still, I believe that you can, we still are in a position, like I said earlier, the fact that we are who we are, that we can still attract funding and people will still invest in us. And if you can give that additional dimension of being, like you said, a green bond or a blue bond, then you'll be able to attract, because there are so many institutions out there all over the world. I'm not talking about the Middle East or Europe, we all know this, that have funds allocated for sustainable bonds. That's general term that used to describe green and blue bond. And coincidentally, I say this is one of the topics that we are bringing up for discussion actually in a couple of weeks' time as well. Why don't we make a more conscious or concerted effort to actually develop that market, because we're going to get funding at concessional pricing as well. That's a big advantage for us as a country, and it filters down, right? So hopefully you will see more green issuances and blue issuances as well in the not too distant future. So it's like also, took a little while orange and sort of green and blue. I'm quite familiar with. I'm not sure about the other colors, but anyway, basically sustainable finance. I think we can attract money in that arena, and we can attract it at prices. That's the main thing. So as a country, we benefit.
Yeah, thank you. That's the comprehensive answer. But I want to have a follow-up question with that. I mean, it can go fund a pie in the sky if you don't have a proper mechanism for it. Like we were talking about the PFP structure, right? Now, if you take Bank Negara, I mean, the miracle of the Eastern Tigers was actually the way Malaysia managed the funding, right? They had set up a Sharia-compliant board at the Bank Negara level, which is their central bank. Now, does our central bank have that in place to issue a sovereign we talked about earlier?
I think it does, because I was part of a sort of an ADB-sponsored project where I was a local consultant, and there was a consultancy out of Cambridge University also, and we were the two the same. We did we passed various things where the central bank was involved, the Inland Revenue was department, but it was spearheaded by the SEC. So it was the ADB sponsored the SEC, and SEC recruited a Hong Kong based, which was a little convoluted. But a lot of amendments were made as a result of that, which means now that's why listed sukuk are possible because of those amendments that were made. Similarly, part of the roadmap that we developed for the 2-year, it was supposed to be 1 month project that went on for over a year, but one of the things that we also put in place was the mechanism that you could actually extend it to the sovereign as well, because at the end of the day, if you want to really make them up, private debt is going to get you so. When I say private means private companies, even if they are listed, finally you want the, the listed, like you said, the bank Negaras, how they sort of accommodated foreign funding. They were able to attract funds like, there are some institutions which will come in, but their minimum investment, they're not going to come. So who can borrow $1 billion? Only the sovereign can borrow. So if you have that, I think it's a mindset as well. And I think just one sort of anecdote that, it was an event where it was at the Galadar, something 15, 20 years ago, I remember, about the sovereign doesn't have this concern with sukuks. The disconnect there is that the sovereign is used to giving funds without collateral. Yeah. So they assume that when you say it's asset backed or asset based, that it is collateral. But the CEO of NDBIB, Vajra, at that time he mentioned this at a big forum and sort of drew a big round of applause as well. He said, countries like South Korea, Germany, the UK, they issued sukuk with assets. Yes. So who are we with our rate? We say we can't give an asset as collateral. And one of the things he said was, let's say our toll roads, why don't you use that as an asset? He said, it's not collateral, they're not going to, these are his words, they're not going to roll up the road, put it in a suitcase and go back with it if you don't pay. It's just a mechanism that you use that you need an asset back. I mean, you're an expert, you've done your own super, you are the first to do that at HDFC. So you know what I'm talking about, but I think it's a mindset.
Mindset,
you
it's
can change the mindset to say that, okay, if Great Britain and the state of Saxony can issue sukuk, they are AAA rated countries and states, why can't we?
I mean, we've done newspaper articles, we are about 10 years too late in getting a Sharia compliant board at the central bank, right? I mean, this should have happened, a long time ago, but anyway, it's never too late. But again, coming to your question about labor force, we have 19 to 29 years who are unemployed with degrees and all that. Even when the DITWA came, I put a proposal to say that, like what Singapore is doing, go for conscription and train them under the army, build houses and labor, which is respectable kind of things to do. And even farming and all that can be done through national conscription, like you serve national service. Not for combat training, but there are so many carpenters and all these people who were recruited, who did the beautifying of Colombo, all the walkways, those things were done by the army, right? And so why not do it? But then again, it's a mindset. If we have a building, we have a way to do it. So I'm encouraged. Any other questions from the audience? You have one?
Quick one for Revan. What city was supposed to...
The quick one for everyone. Port City was supposed to reverse the brain drain of many of the professionals who've left Sri Lanka, especially during the economic crisis of 2022. We heard that there will be opportunities for people to earn and the taxation environment will be much better and there will be an influx. Is that something that's real at the moment or is it in the offing? When can we expect that benefit to bear fruit?
I think it is very real at the moment. So with the construction industry taking off, or 3 plots or 4 plots, construction activity taking off, as I mentioned, $500 million projects, that in itself is going to create significant employment opportunities for the businesses that supply the construction industry. From workers to do the work, to the consultants that come in on the EPC side, from engineers, water, electricity, architects, designers, etc. So there is going to be a huge ecosystem of employment opportunities created just across the construction industry. And that you have people on your panel who are developers in one of the land parcels, and they can elaborate further on that. Outside of that, what have we done? We've got approximately 180 businesses that are already licensed under the Colombo Port City Economic Commission. These businesses are utilizing approximately 150,000 square meters of office space in and around Colombo. Those office spaces were vacant until then. So there is employment opportunities created directly by these 180 companies, and that we estimate is about 12 to 15,000 jobs. And then when those officers are running in those spaces, the opportunities that are created for servicing those officers, the ecosystem that is there for car hire companies, taxis, restaurants, supermarkets, etc. So even as of now, the contribution to the economy from the Colombo Port City, and you're not even seeing a building come up there, we believe is significant. And as the buildings continue to come up, more companies establish themselves and start operating, you're going to see a significant multiplier effect.
Thank you. I think time is a constraint, so we have to come to an end. And thank you for carefully listening and also participating. And I'm privileged again. I learned a lot from the insights that these panelists share with us. So thank you, Ms. Priyanka. Thank you, Mr. Revan. Thank you, Mr. Raif. And it has been a really inspirational panel session. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you, the audience. Okay.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. May we please request the moderator and our panelists to remain on stage for a moment as we wish to convey our gratitude by presenting a token of appreciation. And to do the honors, I respectfully invite Mr. Roshan Madawala, CEO and founder, RI Unit. Ms. Priyanka Samaravia, Executive Director, Investment Promotion and Research, COI Sri Lanka. Mr. Revan Vikramasuriya, Director General, Colombo Port City Economic Commission. Mr. Richard Rao, Managing Director, ADL Capital. And finally, our moderator, Dr. Anil Priyanka, Senior Consultant, RIU. Thank you very much. We will now have a short sponsor presentation by Maximus Industries.
Every journey of progress begins with a commitment. A promise to build stronger, to innovate fearlessly, and to uplift every community along the way. For more than 6 decades, that promise has shaped us. Maxim